Welcome back to ManaTutor MTG Draft. Today we're looking to level up on deck building. I saw a post on Reddit where a player who regularly hits Mythic in Constructed and Diamond in Premier Draft posted a deck that went 0-3, and they wondered how such a powerful deck went winless. Here's the deck. It's got a bunch of pretty good cards, mostly in the C range, and a handful in the B to A range. Most of our draft principles tout finding and playing the good cards, which this player mostly did. But I think this is a good example of a deck constructed purely by 17 land stats in a vacuum, and not putting those stats in context. We'll start by assessing this deck in the context of the big picture of the Edge of Eternities format, and then we'll go card by card, assessing where 17 land stats can steer you wrong. Edge of Eternities is a format where you want to get on board early to snowball your resources or deny your opponent resources. But it's not particularly fast. You want to lean towards ensuring you win the long game. Winning comes down to 3 conditions. 1, you're either bigger than your opponent. 2, you're flying over your opponent when you're both big. Or 3, you're combating your opponent's size and evasion by out-resourcing your opponent. And you generally want to have access to 2 of those win conditions. Here's where I think the original poster leveled himself. He called having 10 1-2 mana plays a good curve. I agree with the fact that it's common for bad players to put too many 3+ drops in their decks and underestimate the number of early plays they need. In some faster formats, 10 2-drops is entirely viable. But Edge of Eternities is about going bigger, and only having 4 decent 5+ drops is underestimating how big you want to go in this format. There is an exception to going big when you're out-resourcing your opponent. If you're blue and playing a lot of Cryogen Relics or other card draw, you don't need to go so big. In that case, you're trying to play more cards, not expensive cards. But this deck doesn't have access to card draw and isn't looking to out-resource your opponent. Now let's look at this deck card by card. I like Gene Pollinator. I'm not in love with it, and you usually don't want to play more than 1 copy, because if you get multiples, you again risk having your cards be too small. But I like it in decks that have more cards to ramp to, especially 4 drops and higher, which this deck is lacking. I also prefer Gene Pollinator in decks that have a small splash. I don't know the original poster's draft, but it might have been worth splashing for some high-end finishers. Next up, we have Zookeeper Mechans, which again, I like, but only if you have 4 CMC plus drops to ramp to. This deck has 3 Auraplate Pangolins, which like Gene Pollinators, have diminishing returns. With multiples on the field, it's expensive to get the advantage for each one. I also prefer to play these in decks with more artifacts. Red-green is its worst performing archetype at a D grade. The rest of the 2-drops are fine. Again, there's just too many for this format. I'm usually looking for 6 to 8 early plays in these decks, not 10. The 3-drops look fine, but while I'd still definitely play Larval Scotlander, this deck would benefit a lot from having more high drops to ramp to. I like the removal of Cut Propulsion, Orbital Plunge, and Diplomatic Relations. Some of the Reddit commenters quoted not having enough removal as the primary reason the deck went 0-3. While I agree that having 1 to 2 more removal would be ideal, I agree with the original poster that creatures are more important than removal in these green decks, and that the lack of removal wasn't the primary reason the deck performed poorly. Some commenters mentioned having cheap removal would have helped, and I definitely disagree with that sentiment. If anything, the way this deck is built, it was trying to be aggressive and needed big removal to remove big blockers that could stonewall your small creatures. It didn't need cheap removal. I already mentioned the deck needs more top end, but the top end that it has, while I definitely keep it in, is underwhelming. Debris Field Crusher isn't a good card. Lash Whip Predator is overrated. It's performing at a C- clip. You already have plenty of ramp in this deck, and you don't need the benefit of getting a mana discount on this card. Extinguisher Battleship is okay, but I prefer to have it in decks where I could expect to have a couple of creatures out that won't die to it. This top end is leaning heavily on Glacial Godmaw, which is probably my favorite card in green. In summary, you want to draft keeping in mind the context that makes cards perform well. Yes, I believe the original poster probably got a bit unlucky to go 0-3 with this deck. Magic is a high variance game, and the best players will go 0-3 from time to time. But I also encourage viewers to look at, in addition to what you can't control, what you can control to improve your game. That's all for today, and see you in the next one.